When I first saw that Drake tank in Destiny, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice to be able to tank all of that damage and shoot rockets out of my back all of the time? I quickly realized that that was a foolish dream until I saw Destiny post about the new Titan exotic, Hazardous Propulsion, and I knew my dreams came true. So I got to work, planning, crafting, and perfecting a Titan build that allows you to tank a ton of damage and shoot rockets out of your back. So rally your fellow Guardians, prepare your arsenal, and get ready to step inside the walking tank build. Remember to leave a like if you find this video helpful, and if you like seeing build videos and other Destiny 2 helpful content, consider hitting that subscribe button. With that being said, let's jump right on into it. If there's one thing I love about this build, it's how fun it is to use. We're bringing the new Titan exotic, Hazardous Propulsion, where you can deal precision damage or final blows to have a chance to gain a stack of Exodus rockets. Depending on how many stacks you have, you can send up to 6 rockets at a time by using your class ability. Depending on how many rockets hit enemies, you'll gain an increase to rocket damage for 10 seconds, maxing out at 35%. The fantastic part about this exotic is that you can play it 2 different ways. You can use the rocket buff, and you can bring rockets as your weapons. That includes rocket launchers, rocket assisted sidearms, and even Grand Overture's rocket volley to buff the damage you can deal by up to 35%, which can be handy for boss phases. Or you can use it for the main purpose of dealing damage with the rockets you send from your class ability. See, the rockets deal a ton of damage, and when I say a ton, they deal more damage than a single shot of most rocket launchers. This is super nice for ad dense environments where you can wipe out groups of enemies or pop it on a mini boss or boss for some free extra damage. Plus, you can continuously load Exodus rockets by dealing precision damage. So if you're using something like a linear or a machine gun in a damage phase, you're gaining more stacks while dealing boss damage. So let's dive into the build and break down how it works. First up for our super, I like to take Twilight Arsenal. This super has just been so much fun to use. The mix of burst damage at range with the potential for continuous ad clear makes it really shine, and you get to add that weaken effect in case your team isn't doing that for you already. Though with our fragments, you could take Blade Fury instead, but we'll touch on that in a minute. When it comes to the abilities, for our class ability, I'm taking Thrusters. Thrusters feel immaculate with this. Being able to dodge while shooting rockets is just chef's kiss. Not to mention, it also has the shortest cooldown, making it easier to send more volleys of rockets. For a melee, I'm choosing Thunderclap, with the new changes to Thunderclap dealing more base damage and maximum damage, as well as increased damage resistance. I had to try it out. Now, whenever you start to get low on health, charge up that Thunderclap to decimate enemies while taking less damage and gaining health back in the process. For the grenade, I landed on the Suppressor Grenade for 2 main reasons. 1, stopping enemies from attacking you. It can help set up for that Thunderclap. And number 2 is based on a fragment that we'll touch on in a minute. As for the aspects, the first aspect we're taking is Knockout. With the new changes to Knockout, you gain increased melee damage and range, plus make yourself amplified and get health back based on the enemies that you kill. Becoming amplified will allow you to pair into the artifact perks that we'll be mentioning later, so it will give you ways to take less damage overall. The second aspect we're taking is Diamond Lance. Now, any ability kill will spawn a Diamond Lance. These lances can be thrown to freeze targets or slammed into the ground to deal damage and freeze nearby targets. This freezing allows us to deal more damage, safely close the gap on enemies, and pair into our first fragment, which is Facet of Command, where killing a frozen target will drop a stasis shard, and killing a suppressed target drops a void breach. We can freeze with diamond lances, and we can suppress with our grenade. The stasis shards will give back melee energy, and the void breaches will give back class ability energy. Remember, we want to get our class ability back quick so that we can shoot rockets more often, and our melee gives us instant health and more damage resistance, so we do want that as well. For our next fragment, we're taking Facet of Ruin. This increases the size and burst from shatter damage, which is very easy to cause with Diamond Lance, leading to more overall damage. And then I also take Facet of Protection. We end up being surrounded a ton in order to use our Thunderclap, so this allows us to get an extra 15% damage resistance on top of all of the other ways that we can gain damage resistance. And I also like to pair that with Facet of Hope, so you're gaining 60% increased class ability regeneration whenever we have a buff. Again, we're shooting for our class ability back as much as possible to shoot more rockets. We have a very high uptime on elemental buffs because of our next fragment, which is Facet of Purpose. And based on your super, when you pick up an orb, you'll get an elemental buff. Since we're on Void, we get a Void Overshield, which is 22 health and takes 50% less damage for about 5 seconds. And this is where that super comes in. If you want Woven Mail instead, which is going to give you that 45% increased damage resistance, that can be very helpful. But I like the Twilight Arsenal Arsenal as the best super to deal damage, so it's kind of up to you which one you want to run. Either way, you want that elemental buff to pair back into that previous fragment, Facet of Hope. So the gameplay loop goes like this. Use a weapon to hit those crits and gain stacks of Exodus rockets. Continue the cycle of hitting crits and using your thrusters near a group of enemies as much as you like. When in trouble, start to charge that thunderclap to take less damage and to gain back health and more damage resistance whenever you kill those targets. Pick up your diamond lances whenever you see them to deal extra damage. Pretty simple, but very effective. Oh, and a helpful tip, if you wait long enough after creating a diamond lance before using it, you'll actually be able to infinitely chain creating diamond lances. So let's talk about ways to improve the build. First up for our stats, I am shooting for 100 resilience. Of course, we want that extra damage resistance, but with this build, it also revolves around using your class ability. So we want our thrusters to have as short of a cooldown as possible. After that, I like to shoot for 100 strength. Our melee gives health, deals a ton of damage, and increases our damage resistance. So you do also want that to have a very short cooldown. And finally, I shoot for a mix of recovery and discipline. Both are helpful, but not really a staple for the build. And when it comes to the armor mods, for our helmet, I'm taking Strand Siphon, so that rapid strand weapon kills will create orbs. Orbs will give you Void Overshield, as well as a ton of ability energy. So we want a ton of ways to create orbs, and I usually like to run a strand weapon with this build. If you're running a stasis weapon, then swap this one out for a Stasis Siphon mod. After that, I also like to pair it with Hands On to help generate more super energy. Twilight Arsenal is very effective and can deal a ton of damage, so getting that super back can be very helpful in a lot of scenarios. For the gauntlet mods, I'm taking Heavy Handed so that our powered melees will now create orbs. There is a 10-second cooldown on this, but this gives us a way to instantly get a Void Overshield on demand, as well as gaining health. So I also like to pair that with melee kickstart. Since our melee is so powerful, I want a bunch of ways to get it back, and now we can use our armor charge to refund up to 35% of our melee whenever we use it. I'm typically not a huge fan of kickstart mods, but it felt perfect for this build. As for the chest mods, I'm going for 3 resistance mods. I like to take 1 harmonic, 1 concussive, and 1 melee resistance. We tend to get up close and personal, so that melee resistance definitely helps, especially when we're trying to gain that health back. But if you are running an activity that has certain elemental focuses, then bring those resistance mods to match up with that and take even less damage. When it comes to the legs, I wanted to go for insulation so that we can get our class ability back quicker, though it only gives 4% to our class ability. So instead, I chose the combo of Orbs of Restoration to give back 10% to our least charged ability, Absolution to give 5% to all of our abilities, and Invigoration to give 10% to our melee. That way we can gain back a guaranteed 15% to our melee and 5% to both our grenade and our class ability. And then whatever ability is the lowest, you're going to gain 10% back to that. If you'd like, you could drop Orbs of Restoration for a Weapon Surge mod to match up with whatever weapon you want to deal the most damage. But I like to take Orbs of Restoration to have the most amount of ability energy as possible. When it comes to the mark, I'm going with Outreach as my first mod so that we gain 12% melee energy whenever we use our class ability. That way we can help cycle back and forth between our melee and our thrusters as much as possible. And I'm also going to take Reaper so that now when we're using our thrusters, our next weapon kill will generate an orb. And we've already touched on how powerful orbs can be for a build like this, which is also why I'm going to take Powerful Attraction so that now whenever we do use those thrusters and shoot out that volley of rockets, we're also going to be picking up any nearby orbs to gain that Void Overshield as well as all of that ability energy. And when it comes to the artifact, there is one mod that you must take off if you're going to plan on using the rocket buff. Radiant Orbs gives you Radiant when picking up an orb, and currently Radiant overrides the rocket buff. Normally, it takes the highest buff possible, which would be the 35%, but with this bug, Radiant actually overrides it, only giving you 25%, so you want to avoid becoming Radiant at all costs. Again, that is only if you plan on using the rocket buff. If you're just using this exotic for the extra rockets and extra damage, then you don't really have to worry about that. But there are a few mods that I really like with this build. First up, Creeping Chill. This can be really good if you plan on taking a stasis primary. That way when you're getting those kills, you can spread that slow to nearby enemies. Second, I also like Void Hegemony, which gives you a 15 health overshield when killing a weakened enemy. And remember, your axes from your super weaken targets. That's why we take Hands On to gain more super energy and pop our axes more often. The third one we're going for is Galvanic Armor, which gives you 30% damage resistance while you're amplified, which is basically all the time, since any powered melee kill makes you amplified. And remember, with something like Knockout, after you use that Thunderclap, you can continuously use your normal melee, but it counts as a powered melee, which it will make you amplified again. And the fourth one I'm taking is Shield Crush, so that you gain increased melee regen and damage while you have a Void Overshield, and you gain increased grenade damage and regeneration while amplified, which is basically constantly. So you can pretty much have melee regen and damage and grenade regen and damage almost all the time. And the last one I'm looking at is Transference, so that while you're transcendent, you gain more melee high and grenade damage. Plus, you gain Transcendent energy back based on how many weapon kills you get while you're Transcendent. As for the weapons, I'm highly recommending a weapon with Strategist as your main weapon. That way, kills will give you back 10% of your class ability energy and make it easy to continuously cycle rockets. My favorite combo is the new sidearm, the Call. Since it's rocket assisted, we can constantly gain 35% damage for it from our exotic, and it can roll with Strategist to continuously gain class ability energy. Otherwise, I might go for a weapon like Bold Endings, which can roll with Strategist and help spread that slowing effect from the artifact. For the energy slot, if I'm using the Call, I'm likely pairing that with the new Red Death, since we can consistently heal ourselves at range and easily proc those precision hits to gain more rockets. Once this weapon gets its catalyst, it's going to be a menace. Otherwise, when we gain access to this season's weapons, you can bring the new Aberrant Action, which is a solar rocket assisted sidearm, to gain all the same benefits as the Call. As for the heavy slot, once that solar rocket assisted sidearm is available, I'm gonna most likely be running either Apex or Dragon's Breath as my solar heavy, and potentially swap out one of those leg mods for a solar weapon surge to deal some massive damage after popping our rockets from our class ability. But when you're running activities like the Final Shape campaign, I recommend a machine gun like Pro Memoria to help deal crit damage and gain more rockets in the process. So there you have it, Guardians. We've covered a build that lets you tank a ton of damage while shooting rockets out of your back to clear out pockets of enemies and even lead to some pretty high damage in boss phases. Remember, mastering these builds is only the beginning. Experiment with different combinations, tweak your loadouts to suit your playstyle, and never stop honing your skills. If you found this video helpful or just enjoyed seeing a new perspective, feel free to like the video and comment down below what you might change or how you'd improve the walking tank build. Keep an eye out for future videos as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Destiny 2. Until then, may the threads of fate be ever in your favor. This is Lucky Mech, signing off. See you on the next adventure, Guardians.